Previously, a random goddess made a mistake and Kelvin died as a result, so she sought help from the goddess of reincarnation, Malfina. Malfina did reincarnate Kelvin, but when he saw her, he fell for her that he confessed his feelings to Malfina. Malfina also fell in love with Kelvin after hearing his lovey-dovey flirting, to the point where she accepted Kelvin as her husband. So, when Kelvin was reincarnated, he traded his memories for a stat boost. With that, he began his journey and made many friends along the way. He made a slime his contracted beast, then made a contract with a dark knight and purchased a half-elf, not to mention saving the demon king's daughter. And now they've all arrived in the new city to eat rice, but they've become entangled with a bandit group called Black Wind. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the heroes' party also arrived, but when Kelvin defeated the bandits group, the heroes' party mistook Kelvin for a bandit and the bandits for an adventurer party, and they were about to fight Kelvin and his party. And everything went according to Kelvin's plan. The heroes' party took his bait, but to make things equal, Kelvin offered to fight them all alone, which Toya took as an insult, but Setsuna knew Toya was strong. All of them were fighting against Kelvin, but none of them could even scratch him. Toya also used one of his gloves to mimic Miyabi's unique skill, as well as Sarah's combat ability. They all had a clear serious advantage, but they didn't know how to collaborate and work as a team. So Kelvin began giving them pointers, such as Toya's dual welding, which he didn't use against him. Following that, the wind became clear, and as Kelvin reveals, he was pointing out their weaknesses and teaching them throughout the fight. After defeating the Black Wind gang, Kelvin actually gave the credit to Toya and his party in order to avoid as much attention as possible. But they couldn't keep it a secret from the Empress, so they all received an invitation from the Empress of the Tourage, and to thank them for eliminating the Black Wind, Empress Sabaki hosted a banquet for them. However, the Empress tried to persuade Kelvin to stay in Tourage even longer, as she desired Kelvin to be her personal caretaker. However, Kelvin refused and returned to his normal life, but as the size of his party grew, Kelvin purchased a larger home to accommodate everyone. For maids, Kelvin hired Ellie and Ruka, whom he saved from slavery when he was in Tourage from the Black Wind gang. Then, at night, Kelvin was finally able to summon Malfina, so as a reward for finally summoning her, Malfina gifted the goddess of reincarnation grace on Kelvin, but it comes with 2 skills, one of which is that any or all damage taken from a hit will be nullified, but it can only be used once per month. The ability to summon heroes from another world is the second grace. Kelvin had to decide whether to summon a hero or not, while Malfina and Sarah began dueling each other because they both wanted to sleep with Kelvin, but the match ended in a draw. Even after so much time had passed, Kelvin was still unable to decide whether or not he should summon someone. If he summons someone like Toya and his friends, it means that Kelvin will rob them of their normal lives. So, instead of summoning, Malfina told him reincarnate instead, because summoning means teleporting a living person, which takes less MP. However, reincarnation requires double MP, which means that Kelvin will give someone a second chance at life. So Kelvin chose the second option and reincarnated Girl as a hero. The reincarnation spell took a long time to summon a new hero named Rian, and at first Kelvin thought she was mad for bringing her back from the dead. But Rian was overjoyed that Kelvin had reincarnated her. She had been weak since a young age and had never had the chance to see the outside world in her previous life. So getting a second chance, especially in a fantasy world, was more than she could ask for. And since the duel and stakes of sleeping with Kelvin were a draw, Malfina and Sarah both decided to share his bed. Aside from that, now that Kevin has some new members in his party, he has used a skill to share experience points with them so that they can level up. Also, to share it with Ellie and Ruka so that they can both defend themselves in the future. Then a massive wolf attacked them, but instead of killing it, Kelvin tamed it and struck another deal with another beast. Considering him a gift for children, he was named Alex. That night, the entire mansion was surrounded by assassins, but their levels were too much of a joke for them. So, in order to gain some fighting experience, Rian agreed to take on the task. The scene then shifts to the kingdom of Trison, where the Black Wind gang from Tourage was directly under Trison's command. And now that they've been apprehended, it's become quite difficult to deal with them, especially since 3 countries, the Kingdom of Elf, the Holy Empire, and the Tourage, were about to form an alliance. So the King of Trison, along with his minister and royal heir, were concerned about their next move. So Tristan, the general of Trison's monster army, proposed going to war with the 3 nations. Trison is the largest military nation, so it was a wise move to gain the upper hand. And when Princess Shutaro and Prince Osgard agreed to the proposal, King Zell dispatched his commander Clive to handle it. Meanwhile, Kelvin was on his way to one of the elf villages in the Elf Kingdom. After hearing the Empress of Tourage's praise for Kelvin, the Elf King Leonhardt specifically requested that Kelvin slay a S-rank beast within his territory, and this task is now considered a promotion exam for Kelvin to be a S-rank adventurer. However, when they met the village chief of the elf village Nellis, he mistook a feel for a long-dead elf. Previously, the Dragon King went on a rampage in their village, claiming that an elf had mocked him. So, in order to save everyone, an elf named Lumiel stepped forward and offered herself to the Dragon King with the condition that he spare the lives of the innocent elves. The Dragon King accepted her and made Lumiel his wife, but Lumiel was later discovered dead in the forest after a few years. So, originally, this elf village should have been in the west, but it was relocated due to the Dragon King's fear after Lumiel's death. Now, everything sums up Afiel being raised as a slave since childhood and bearing the Dragon King's curse. But Afiel is half elf and half human bloodline, so what happened? Aside from that mystery, the S-rank monsters were a more pressing concern. They appear near their village, but instead of killing them, they kidnap elves. This implies that someone is responsible for the attack. To save the elves, Kelvin built walls of enchanted stones with a tower to keep an eye on the attackers at all times. Gerard was on a hold as the last line of defense while Afiel and Kelvin acted as snipers. And Melfina, along with Alex and Rian, dealt with the attackers while purposefully leaving one soldier behind, so that he could lead them to their base and capture their commander of operations. Given the situation, the commander unleashed a powerful giant on them. They tamed it with a collar obtained from Prince Trice Nosgard. So for that giant, Alex and Rian took the initiative to engage in a fight with their stats. It shouldn't be that difficult, but just when they thought the giant had been defeated, he transformed into a fire titan. Nonetheless, Rian had undergone even more rigorous training for this fight and defeated the giant with Alex. But then Clive appeared to make it clear that Tryson is now going to war. Clive is essentially a seducer, mind-controlling any women he sees fit to sleep with, and was now after Afiel. He tried to control her, which enraged Kelvin even more. Clive is a power drunk who came from another world like heroes and was reincarnated in this world, where he was already far more powerful than others. So he wanted to end this duel with his most powerful spell to kill Kelvin, but Kelvin also used his scythe spell, which he had never used on anyone before due to its power. He used that to sever Thought Clive's spell and cut down his legs. But, to save him, the general of the monster army, Tristan, appeared and teleported him away with his teleportation magic. What goes around comes around, and Clive was saved, but only to serve as a test subject because he had lost to Kelvin. On the other hand, Kelvin is about to be promoted to rank S because the King of Elf Leonhardt disguised himself as a child and observed everything. So we'll have to wait for another season until then, but in the meantime, subscribe to the channel for more anime recaps like this one.